So I'll have you know that Carrie O'Connor wrote that song for this service. So this month we are celebrating and focusing and exploring the divine masculine energy. And since we're also doing the Soul Trek theme this year, I was thinking that the qualities of the divine male are pretty well exemplified in Jean-Luc Picard, wouldn't you say? Captain Picard, I mean, he's like the perfect example of the divine masculine. So some of the qualities of the divine masculine are to be decisive and logical, courageous and strong. And the divine masculine uses power with intelligence and compassion. And they are not afraid to take action, nor afraid of conflict. Jean-Luc Picard, right? I mean, and what is he famous for saying? Make it so. Always listening to his advisors and then moving in that direction of making it so. Now, as we celebrate the gifts of the divine masculine, we're not talking about gender necessarily. We are talking about the divine masculine and feminine, but the divine masculine energy this month that is within men and women, because it isn't just limited to men. And when we're expressing the divine masculine energy, we're able to explore, we're able to get things done. It's successes and achievements. It's that ability to, even when we fail, we get up again, right? You know, we just keep going, we keep showing up, and we keep doing what needs to be done. June is also, as Diane already mentioned, that this is, or Aaron mentioned, that this is the moving up ceremony day, where all the kids downstairs are moving from grade to grade. And of course, you know, kids are graduating and going into another grade. And just offhand, is there anybody here that has just graduated from any kind of a program? Anybody? Can you just stand so we can say yay to you? James is getting his license teaching, correct? Yes. And Tara is getting her just graduated her master's in divinity. SPU. So we are blessed, and I think it's important that when we have these moments that we celebrate them, right? Because how often do we move from one thing to another? Yep, got that diploma, I'm on. It's like, you know what? Stop and enjoy and celebrate the pinnacles. Is Linda Wiley here at this service? Okay, because I had a certificate for her for completing a program with the youth ministry. So if you could drop the screen, Raimi. So we've already mentioned that I have, at June 11th, it'll be 30 years that I have been in ministry, and I thought, well, hey, when can I show you my pictures? Now I gotta get out my photo albums and, you know, start going through the things. I just wanted to show you just a few things and just kind of, believe me, this is not long. This will be like 4 minutes at the most. So this is in ministerial school, and one of the things that I enjoyed about my ministerial school class was that we really were bonded and connected, and we had a lot of fun. There really wasn't any big egos in our class. You know, people just really joined together. And in this slide, this is a service that some of us in the class were doing for the rest of the student body, and it's the story of the prodigal son is what we were doing. And on the bottom, I am the wanton woman who is leading the prodigal son astray. And in the top slide, I am the jealous brother who's mad because his brother came back and his father killed the fatted calf. You'll notice that there is a clown there, and the clown represents the Holy Spirit, who in my jealousy and anger pops me on the head with a balloon, and all of a sudden everything's just fine. So So that was one of the experiences. And I shared this the first service, but we really were a class that was very cohesive, to the point where on the night of our ordination, one of us was able to do the commencement address. One of us was chosen. I suppose that's not unusual, but rather than picking the person who was the smartest or the funniest or the most spiritual, we put all of our names in a hat and pulled the name out, and whoever that person was the one that got to give the commencement address to 1,000 people at our ordination. And it was wonderful, and there was no like, oh, it should have been me. There was no jealousy. It was like we celebrated her as she gave the commencement address. Can we go to the next one? So this is the day of the ordination, and I was at our graduation ceremony, and I was one of the singers, so that was before the service started. It's sort of like Olivia with her keeping the tradition going. And the next one, please. You've already seen that one. That's the night of ordination. So what's interesting to me is my teachers told us that we had specific rules that we must always follow. And one is never wear open-toed shoes on the platform, ever. And the second was never wear pants on the platform. So since this is my 30-year anniversary, and my teachers are all dead, I figure, I can wear pants now. The next slide. So this is jumping ahead a little bit, but my first ministry was in Olathe, Kansas, and Olathe, Kansas is a big Nazarene community, especially back in the 80s. And Unity really was seen as a cult. And so I had this small church, and I would go to different events in the town to try to get the word out. And I'd say, hi, I'm the minister from Unity of Olathe. And they would say, oh, yeah, you're the administrator of Unity of Olathe. And I'd say, no, I'm the minister, which... Anyway, then I would go to the hospitals to visit people, and I'd bring a bunch of daily words and I would pass them out. And I found out later that they would confiscate them after I left because they thought I was there to get the patients and lead them to hell, that was one of... So it was an interesting first year. It was an interesting first year. I then moved to Reno, Nevada, where I was a senior co-minister with my husband, Steve Tolles, for 5 years. And that was just a great ministry. It was just, the people were amazing. I loved the town. I just loved everything about it. It was very hard to leave. And then fast forward to 1990, and I arrived here. My daughter was 6 weeks old, and my son was not yet 2. And the church was in trouble. The church was fighting, and it was really interesting. It was like the Jerry Springer show is what Seattle Unity was like back then. So there's my son in my office. And there's my daughter. This was on Valentine's Day here at the church. And here's our Christmas party that we had here. And my daughter just took her little Garfield doll and just put it in the middle of her dinner. And she was done. That's kind of the way she is even today. And the next slide. So that's us. That's the whole family when we first arrived. And then the next slide. So Steve and I were co-ministers, senior co-ministers here for 12 years. It allowed me to raise my children, to be here to work, but also to be a mom, which is a big, big, big part of my life, is raising my children. And then when Steve left, Richard Levy came in for 5 years, and then I became the associate, and he became the senior. By the way, I did talk to Richard last week. He called me, and he is doing so much better. He is healing, and I think it's due in large part to the thousands of prayers that he's getting, but he's doing other alternative forms, and he apologized for not calling. I said, I think you had an excuse. I think I think you had a really good excuse. But anyway, when Richard was here for 5 years and became the senior and I was the associate, for me it was a break, because being the senior, even though you're not here physically in the building, you're holding this community 24/7. There's a psychic thing of holding the community. And so when Richard came in, he took the community. And I remember feeling this thing like, wow, Richard's got it, and I can come and go. And it was great. It was like this vacation sort of that I got. And so now, of course, then he left in about 2008, and then I was hired as the senior minister. So this, I just want to go back to, we used to do a lot of plays when the kids were here, when my kids were little. And that's my son, Jordan, who, he has a photographic memory, so he would memorize long dialogues. Of course, he got the lead part, Had nothing to do with the fact that he was the minister's kid. And then finally, this last slide is my favorite. This is Jordan and Caroline running up the aisle here after church one Sunday. And it just, for me, just holds and just demonstrates the love and the family and the connection that is here at Seattle Unity and continues to be and flourishes and grows. So thank you. So that's what I wanted to share. So now on to the serious stuff. So I want to talk about Abraham, because I don't think that we could go into the divine masculine without talking about Abraham, who was the father of Israel and the father of Islam. He was called out of his home by God. He said, I will make your descendants so vast, you'll have so many descendants, and you will be this father of this great nation, and you'll have so many descendants, they'll be like the grains of sand on the beach. You won't even be able to count them. Now, the thing about this was that Abraham didn't have any children, and he was older, as was his wife, and so he had no children, and it didn't look like they were ever going to have children. And yet Abraham, in his faith, continually followed his guidance, followed his calling, and it was in steps and it was in stages. And, in thinking, well, maybe I've got this wrong. God wants me to have all these descendants, so he decided that maybe what God really meant was for Hagar, who was the maidservant of his wife Sarah. Maybe if she had a child through him, then that would be his kid, and that would be how he would have all these descendants. So Hagar had a child, and of course then that ended up creating a problem between Sarah and Hagar, and it was a big mess. And then Sarah ends up getting pregnant, and she's like, who knows how accurate the Bible is, but it says that she's like 75 or 80 years old or something. So she has this child, she has Isaac. And once Isaac is born, then the stress really starts up between Hagar and Sarah, to the point where finally Abraham banishes them to the desert, Ishmael and Hagar. And of course, Ishmael goes on then to be the father of the Islam nation, and Isaac ends up being the father, along with Abraham, of Israel. So it was true. He followed his guidance to God, and he became the father of a great nation. So when I look at some of the qualities that Abraham held, one is that he took action, he followed his guidance. His strengths are that he demonstrated extraordinary faith, trust, and obedience in the will of God. But he also was well respected and successful in his occupation. He also had the courage to face a powerful enemy coalition. So you see this strength. You see a Jean-Luc Picard kind of character here, right? So again, in looking at this divine male energy, we also need to look at power. And a man by the name of Jeffrey Pfeiffer wrote a book called Power, Why Some People Have It and Some People Don't. And he is the professor at Stanford Graduate School of Business, and he studies what makes people successful. He said it comes down to a couple of things. One is will, and he defines that as the drive to take on a big challenge. And the second is skill, and that is to take the challenges that one has and turn them into accomplishments. He goes on to say that a successful person's will expresses itself as ambition, energy, and focus. And the qualities of a successful person are self-knowledge, confidence, empathy with others, and the capacity to tolerate conflict. That's a big one, isn't it? The capacity to tolerate conflict. So, again, when I listen to this, I see Jean-Luc Picard. And what I want to do is call out the inner Jean-Luc Picard that's in every single one of us here, male and female. I want you to call forth your inner Jean-Luc Picard. One of the qualities of the divine masculine is action. I mean, it's just something, and even gender-wise, what men seem to do is they take action. When a group of men get together, it feels to me like there's nothing they can't do. And I see it even here in the men's group, right? When the men's group hosts the brunch, or one time they hosted a party, it's like, yeah, sure, we'll all come because the guys are behind it. It must be a good thing. It must be fun. There's this energy that they have. And I sometimes, have this vision. It's kind of like the Enterprise. Like, what if that's what we did in the world? That we went around and we built and we helped, and used that energy in that way. So I feel like right now that we're receiving signs, that we're receiving a calling in some of the same ways that Abraham did, right? Abraham kept getting this calling. You're going to be this father of this great nation. But I don't have any kids. There's no proof. No, you're going to be the father of a great nation. I think the universe is trying to tell us something now. I think the Spirit of God is calling us right now, and it's calling us to take action. It's calling us to make it so, as Jean-Luc Picard would say. So last week, Kelly talked to us about taking action in regards to taking care of the planet. And, the truth is that we've been talking long enough, and now it's time to make it so. Abraham took action, Jean-Luc Picard takes action, and I think that now it's time to bring out that Jean-Luc Picard within us and take action. So this week, I know I don't have to tell you, but we had a shooting at Seattle Pacific University, and that's where Olivia went to school. Is anybody else go there or been there, that's been connected to that? So, it happened not more than, 2 weeks after the experience in Santa Barbara. And luckily, there was a guy there who had pepper spray. John Mice had pepper spray and sprayed him, and then they all tackled him so that he killed one person, Paul Lee, and injured a few more. So it could have been a lot worse than it was. But the truth is, it's like, geez, this is, I think, the third one we've had in Seattle in a couple of years. We had the cafe, and then the bus, which Linda Michalik was on, and now this one. That's a lot. 3 in our own town. And Seattle's a pretty peaceful place, wouldn't you say? I mean, we're pretty progressive and pretty peaceful, and yet these things keep happening over and over again. And I'm sure that many of you saw the clip of the father of the son who was killed in Santa Barbara. And to me, when he spoke, Richard Martinez is his name, when he spoke, the divine masculine was just shooting right through him. He was the embodiment of the divine masculine. And he said, when will this insanity stop? When will enough people say, stop the madness, and that we don't have to live like this? Too many people have died, and we should say to ourselves, not one more. He went on to say later that he said, I am going to ask every person I can find to send a postcard to every politician that you know, and just write 3 words on the postcard. And the postcard should say, not one more. He said, people are looking for something to do. I'm asking people to stand up for something because enough is enough. I think, really, how hard is that to do, to get some postcards, right? And just start writing them to the politicians and to write not one more. Because the truth is, we can send our emails, but boy, is it easy just to kind of go delete, 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 or not even open them, not even see them. But you can't ignore something that is, in physical form, that is paper. So, recently I was watching some old television shows like Route 66 and The Saint and 77 Sunset Strip, and, they're kind of cop shows, and, and one of the things that I noticed that was striking to me was that when there was a conflict in the show, like the bad guy was coming and they had to catch him, that they punched him in the mouth and he passed out, or they knocked him over the head with something. Rarely, when you watch a show from the 50s or the 60s, does anybody pull out a gun and shoot somebody. It's almost not seen. And the difference was so striking that when we turn on any program today, people get shot just for the heck of it. It's like there's, I think, an unreality that happens, particularly with younger people. I've noticed that another show I watch is The First 48. It's about catching a killer within the first 48 hours. So you go through the entire thing, the cameras are there, and you go through the interrogation, and I watched a bunch of them in a row one day, and what I noticed was a distinct pattern. And the pattern was that most of the shooters were about 19 years old, and they were kids, and most of them were African American, and they killed not some random person on the street, although that also happened, but mostly they killed their friend, somebody that they went to kindergarten with, and they'd be in the interrogation room with these people, and he'd say, well, I didn't mean to shoot him. He said, we got in a fight, and he got me mad, and so I just pulled out the gun, and I shot him, and I didn't mean to do it. He's my friend. And I heard it over and over and over again. If this was, if guns weren't so easily available, then you would get in a fight. Someone would punch somebody or break your arm, but you're going to heal. You're going to come back from it, but you can't come back from this. It's too final. One of my girlfriends, one of my best friends, her son had a couple of DUIs. He was in his 20s. He had a couple of DUIs. And so he wasn't supposed to drink and he wasn't supposed to drive, but he did. And he was out one night late, and he'd been drinking and driving, and he was in a car accident. And he thought that he had killed the other driver. And he was so upset that he fled the scene, and he took a cab back home. And so my girlfriend came to the door. He was there, it's 3 a.m, and he said, Mom, I need you to pay the cab. So she says, all right. She goes out to pay the cab. While she's paying the cab, he goes downstairs. Boom, she hears a shot, and he shot himself. That fast, that quick, and guess what? He didn't kill anybody in that accident. That person was fine. I mean, okay, he'd have been looking at a couple of DUI charges maybe, but it wasn't the end. And instead of being able to stop and think about it and freak out, he jumped to conclusions and ended his life, and it was his only child, her only child. These are the kinds of things that are happening, that when Rodriguez or Martinez says, not one more, it's not one more. Australia in 1996 had a mass shooting, 35 people, plus another 20 or 40 that were injured. And after that mass shooting, Australia said, not one more. Not one more. 90 to 95% of the country got behind this idea of getting rid of rapid-firing long guns, and they launched an extensive gun buyback program, and they removed over 650,000 guns. It cost about $500 a piece to do it. Ever since they did that in 1996, you know how many mass shootings they've had? 0. Their homicide rate has dropped drastically. Their suicide rate has dropped by 50%. So I'm not giving us the solution. What I'm asking us to do is to be your own inner Jean-Luc Picard, right? I mean, pretend you're on the Enterprise and you're looking down at this and you're like, hey, we're getting some calls here. We're getting some big calls. The universe is asking us to step forward and to make some changes. Maybe we do what Australia did. I don't know. Maybe we change our TV programs. I don't know what we do, but what I do know is that every single one of us here has the divine masculine energy available to us and moves through us. Yeah? So like Jean-Luc Picard, we have gathered all kinds of information. We have our crew. We have all this knowledge that is available to us. And like Abraham, we're getting a call. We're getting a call from the world that says, not one more. Jean-Luc Picard said, things are impossible until they're not. Right? So what's in front of us may seem like, hey, this is impossible, but it's impossible until it's not. The world is asking us to take action. So my prayer, my call to you this week is to imagine that you are Jean-Luc Picard. Actually, let's do it for a minute. Just close your eyes and take the posture of Jean-Luc, right? I mean, just the way he sits so straight, and he's so commanding, and he is so wise and logical, and he is that divine embodiment of the divine masculine energy. He really is. And imagine that the crew is all of your friends, your family, your loved ones, the internet, all the knowledge that's available to you. And I know that you will know what to do and what steps to take. So as you open your eyes, we reflect, and then we say, make it so. Make it so. Make it so. Thank you.